Okay, I presented the preliminary question to you people, and let me start. There are three questions at first, and I picked up the questions from the audience. The first question to you is, Asia is known as a world factory, right? But there's two major waves rushing through the region. One is the violent confrontation of US and China, of course. And the second one is a digital transformation. And how will those two transformations change the global value chain involving Asian countries, and especially those in ASEAN specifically? And I believe that ASEAN will not be able to compete only the basis of low wages and technological capability to keep up with the advanced nation. So then what is the point they can sell? I think they have to look at for new values and where they can grab the point of the value chain. So I think you touched upon those issues in your presentation, but let me ask again about the supply chain things again. Lurong-san, do you have any comment on it?
Okay, let me start with share some thoughts. Yes, you're right. We are experiencing this U.S.-China confrontation. My basic point is that no matter what happened to this U.S.-China dispute, let's call it, the digital transformation and GVC is kind of a global trend that nobody can really change its direction. You might change its path, but probably not the direction. Neither US or China can afford to close their door and isolate themselves from the GVCs. So this is a key point. But of course, we know that that's politics. Some argue that this US-China dispute may lead to a kind of a two-circle of global value chains. Okay, this is something probably beyond Asian countries' capability to stop that. But if that happens, I think for Asian countries, at least, we need to make sure that if there are two circles of GVCs, let these two circles at least have intersection, and that section should locate in Asia. So, so this is a very basic argument. But of course, to be able to create a kind of a intersection, for Asian countries need to create enough economic gravity, so to have important load in a value chain. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Thank you for your comment. Dr. Inomata, is there something you can say?
Well, maybe I tell something about GVC configuration. I think there are two forces working simultaneously. Well, first, as I said in my presentation, there's digitally enabled services such as the e-commerce or 3D printing or blockchain logistics or virtual presence. I mean, these technologies will extend the margins of GVC to peripheral countries, okay, by lowering the first transportation cost and also transaction cost. So therefore, the new technologies will expand GVC in terms of geography. Well, at the same time, these increasing geopolitical tension between the United States and China will have a huge impact on the perception of firms on their global strategies. Yep. I mean, my prediction is that these firms will shift their focuses to countries with a similar institutional basis or economic or business environment akin to their home countries. Why? Well, this is because they fear our kind of discretionary business intervention by local government of FDI host countries, such as the asset freezes or forced technological transfers. Therefore, the GBC configuration will be driven by not by the wage level differentials between developing and developing countries as in the past, but by their institutional affinity between the countries in question. So it follows then that GBC will expand, will be more globalized in terms of geography, but it also be more localized and fragmented in terms of institutional attributes. That's my view.
Thank you, Inomata-san. Your comment reminded me my experience. Let me share my experience. I have been to Shenzhen in China for over the past few years, so many times, and I witnessed its digital transformation there. And Shenzhen is probably the most digitalized city in Asia, and it's also a key position in the global value chain, right? And every time I visited Shenzhen, I witnessed the change of the landscape of the city. For example, the electronic car, EV, is now become so popular that is now very difficult to find the regular gasoline cars anymore in the street. So there are also so many cars on the road there, but the city is very quiet. So, however, the reason why EV have permeated in the city is because of the preferential taxation and the subsidies to the company who produce the cars, which means they have raised the level of demand. So in other words, it is an artificial market, right? So maybe China can do this because they have money. But what about Indonesia? What about Myanmar? So what I'm trying to say is that if big government plays the big role and pour public funds into stimulating demand and subsidization of production, the competitiveness condition of the market will change. So the question is, where will the fair GBC goes? So about the governmental subsidy and the distortion of the market, that's my question. Inomata-san.
Absolutely, that's a very important point. I mean, with these increasing geopolitical tensions, there is a kind of resurgence of the value of industrial policies, even in advanced economies as well. I mean, there's a really always tricky question on this industrial policy, because whether it is really based on the fair, liberal economics concept or not. But I think these days, especially in terms of economic development, there is a new recognition of the importance of industrial policies, and especially in terms of when these days, the issue of national security sneaks into the economic areas. I believe that firms can no longer expect level playing field. And so there is certainly the firm which can benefit from government intervention and which cannot. And also there is a discrepancy, as you said, between countries with the government who can finance these, industrial policies and who cannot. So that is certainly impact on the the kind of track of development that they are following.
Thank you. So the transparency may be the important element of the policy coordination. Okay, we have many questions from the audiences. Let me pick up some. The question to Dr. Chen is it's about I read it. Do you think this is the power of government policy or each company's excellence? He's asking about he or she is asking about the implementation of DX in Japan is slower than the ASEAN countries. Yes, I agree with it. And Indonesians, Gojek, for example, and they show the very advanced service in there. So what do you think about Japan, observing from Jakarta? I think you're living in one of the most digitalized cities in ASEAN. So I want to hear from you, your observation on Japan.
Yeah, thank you for this question. Actually, many people talk about that why digital economy, we see digital economy is growing faster, just like the wildfire in those countries with not so well regulatory frameworks that are there. One issue we can see here is that digital economy is something new. So to kind of rule the market, this new market, you need new source and new rules to do that. So in advanced economy, the legal system is already there. Some of them outdated, some are not. So this is actually a bigger challenge for policymakers to how to also upgrade those rules and laws to meet the needs of the new economy. But this doesn't mean that I supported we just let digital economy grow like wildfire without any regulation or something. Actually, to the opposite, we as policymakers, we need to have forward-looking sides to see what the market could be. And in this regard, cooperation with market leader is actually important. But here, there's also a drawback that if you work closer to the digital giant, then the new rules could be biased. In this regard, and we can see that when you receive suggestions from the private sector, you need to keep balance between different market players, not just market leaders, but also small and medium firms. So this is something we need to see. But all in all, I think rule setting is something necessary for the long-term development of digital economy. So this is something we really need to emphasize on. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lurong. Well, let me explain. Let me share my experience again. I have lived in Singapore until a couple of years ago, and people speak English there, and the people are punctual, so everything is on time there, and it's a highly digitalized city, and it is probably the most comfortable city in Southeast Asia to live or do business. So but Singapore or the ASEAN in general is being sandwiched by the US and China. So the other people, they are suffering from the confrontation that the world is now facing. So the Singapore has taken the most delicious part of the global value chain so far, such as financial services and the transportation hub or investment and telecommunication. I can name it a lot. So in other words, Singapore has a strategic policy to grip the choke points in GBC, right? So how will the digital wave and the US conflict change Singapore? And Singapore has been leading the ASEAN and it could be the model of ASEAN. So what do you think about it, Lurong-san, observing the Singapore model from Jakarta?
As I mentioned, digitalization and servicification are the two main features of 21st century. In case of Singapore, we see that this country is famous for its excellent services provided to the global economy. So in the new century, I think the country follow this trick can consider the benefit a lot by develop service sector. Service is more innovative, as we mentioned, and the majority of value added is actually located in the service links. And global tendency that we see many manufacturing factors, they move to the service. Instead of selling products, they provide services. So this is a global trend. But in case of Singapore, we imagine that now it provides service to there's one global value chain. It provides service to this GVC. In case this GVC divided into two or even more, the country needs to provide double its works to provide services. There will be a kind of not a good news to the country. So for countries like Singapore, those already have a good position, I think they would try to do whatever they could, try to bring this GVC integrate instead of the other way. So I think my basic argument is to motivate them to be more activated, to group US, China, and other players together ignore those disagreement, met agreement to disagreement. Thank you.
Okay, then Inomata-san, I have a question from audience asking who's going to winner or loser in this transformation and alternation of GVC in ASEAN or in Asia in general. What do you think?
Yes, I read the question. Well, actually, I didn't say that there will be winners and losers in ASEAN. What I said is ASEAN countries are standing on the edge. So it is possible that all countries in ASEAN go to, collectively get out of the middle income trap and move on to the next stage. That's one possibility, yeah? So that there's no losers within the region. But of course, it depends on how the countries can cooperate each other. But apparent, winner in the ASEAN is Singapore, of course. Yes, I mean, these their degree of DX is, doesn't need any explanation. But I sometimes visited Singapore in the past, and what really surprised me is sense the people's sense of efficiency and the speed. The escalators is so quicker than the one in Japan, and they love acronym in the conversation. They can speak quicker, communicate quicker. You see, so and everything is so efficient. So that kind of mindset maybe is one of the foundation of success of Singapore. And of course, there's geographical advantages, and maybe there's a Chinese network, and also they speak English, which is very important. But yes, I mean, I think the question is whether, as Dr. Chen already mentioned, whether the other ASEAN countries can ever emulate Singapore model. That's the key for ASEAN countries in general.
Thank you very much. Well, I may have a question about Singapore from my point of view, whether or not the value of efficiency will keep being so in the future, but under the transformation of a digital world. But anyway, so we should talk about it, the value things in next chance. And the question I picked up is about the new regime of free trade. And we have talked about a lot of things about the free trade agreement and TPPs or WTOs. And the premise is to free the market, liberalize the market is a good thing for everybody. So the lower the tariff or lower the barrier is, then the better economy you have. But what about in the digital era? Destroying the barriers is not good enough. So what do you think is a ideal digital framework of trade, free trade? And I think is that we should redefine the meaning of the digital free trade. You have any idea, Lurong-san, about it?
Yeah, thank you, Oda-san. Yeah, talking about this new rule setting for digital economy, I would say there are so many issues. Some are easier to solve, easy to reach agreement among countries. Some are more difficult to solve. And the good thing I observe here is that we see the countries start to solve this problem by pick up those easy issues. For example, e-commerce, we see that ASEAN has e-commerce agreement. The ASEP agreement has this e-commerce chapter. TPP has this chapter. Issue like e-commerce and IPR protection, that's easier for people to see that, okay, we need to have a rules here so everyone can benefit from this rule setting. There are more difficult issues like data issue. For example, countries' attitude on data could be different. Some will regard it as a basic human rights. Some countries will think, okay, no, they are part of our sovereign properties. This is a topic that's difficult to solve, and we don't expect to find a solution immediately. My idea is that let's start to solve the easier issue first: e-commerce, cybersecurity, cross-border consumer protection. Solve this easy one first. For the difficult one, although we don't have solution right now, at least we should encourage people to communicate with each other to increase the transparency. So I know what's your position, and you know what is my position. And I'm optimistic that as the time moving on, sooner or later we are going to find a solution so everyone will be happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lurong-san. Don't have much time, so my last and brief question to you too is about a little bit different angle. It's about freedom and the security, national securities. And under the circumstances of COVID-19 crisis, so I think it's that COVID-19 illustrated this issue. It's how to control the people and the company by the government, and how you can secure the freedom of individuals and companies. So it appears that China is seeking to enhance its national security by using the digital technology. And while the US claims democracy and liberalism, trying to get China out of their supply chain, especially the field in the digital, and including semiconductor. So what should the ASEAN do to survive between those two nations in the digital world? And what role can the ASEAN play to build an international order and create a stable GBC? I'm asking about the role of ASEAN. Inomata-san.
Well, recently I wrote a small piece for Nihon Keizai Shimbun, and advocating the need for establishment of multilateral framework for to monitor and control the process of US-China decoupling. Yeah, I think US-China decoupling really matters, but the concept of free trade in general, and also security issue within ASEAN, because I think ASEAN and Japan are the biggest stakeholder, I guess. Now, I said that US-China decoupling is just like a porcupine's dilemma. That's a metaphoric fable from psychology. And I believe that neither the United States nor China really wishes to end up with complete decoupling. Yeah, they still want to gain some economic benefit from each other, but just national security issues sneak in. So what we have to do is really the set up a roadmap for an partial and stepwise process of decoupling. Quest for soft landing. Yep, and it really resembles the process of nuclear disarmament. So we really have to bring these two superpowers into the round table. And my point is, why not Japan and ASEAN can work together to take a lead in this process? Because obviously these countries are the biggest stakeholders of decoupling process.
Thank you, Inomata-san, for your comment. Lurong-san, finally, would you share your other views from the ASEAN and Jakarta on decoupling of US and China and the freedom issues in China? So you have something to do with China. Would you share your thoughts, please?
So just 2 points to complement. First, about cybersecurity. I think cybersecurity should be treated equally as a homeland security, because digital is so integrated part of our daily life. So to this point, not just for US or China, actually for every country, need to sit down together to set up international principle, set up the baseline, and set up the international standard of conduct. This is as important as the homeland security. And second point that about you talk about this policy during COVID thing. What I like to argue is that good policy during the COVID pandemic is not necessary to be a good policy in a normal time because COVID pandemic is kind of a global emergency. It's a very special cases and you need a special response to that. But on the other hand, if you stick to the kind of a good policy that you're happy in a normal time, you might lose some good actions in a time of emergency. So there's a two-side story that for Asian country, if you want to learn from those experience, I think it's something you need to keep in mind. That really depends on the time, depends on the condition. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a wonderful comment, Dr. Lurong CHEN. And time is up. I think I have to give the microphone back to Watanabe-san.
Thank you, Dr. Lurong and Dr. Inomata and Ota-san for moderating. We enjoyed the presentation, discussion very much, and wonderful presentation. Thank you again. And I think we are living in a difficult time of geopolitical tensions and technological transformation. But as audience have asked that there are many opportunities, especially in Asia and ASEAN, like many startups emerging, and Gojek is just one example. And so I think we can learn a lot from what is happening in ASEAN and other parts of Asia, even from Japanese perspective. So let us keep continuing discussing and focusing on what is happening there in a difficult time, but there will be many opportunities. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for participating. We're going to close the session. Thank you very much again.